Welcome to the EDF Energy London Eye, sailing through the clouds here above London, venue, of course, for this year's Champions League final. Now, as we head into the quarter-finals of this year's tournament, there are big games all over the continent. Few, though, are as hard to call as Bayern Munich against Juventus. Bayern gunned down Arsenal in the last 16 and they're desperate to get back to the final game to avenge last season's defeat to Chelsea, but Juventus look one of the toughest opponents around. They're unbeaten in this year's tournament and they're led, of course, by Andrea Pirlo, a player the Germans know all too well. Well, arguably the tie of the quarter-finals. Both teams running away with their domestic competitions. A lot of people very hot for Bayern for this year's Champions League, but that Arsenal defeat in the last match would have surprised many, Carlo.
It would have surprised many, but I don't think it changes much. Bayern were beatable before the Arsenal game and they're still beatable. Juventus will know the weaknesses that Bayern have in their team. The two centre-backs I don't think are of the required quality to win the Champions League. I think in midfield, Juventus probably just have the edge in the centre of midfield. I think Juventus will go into this game knowing they can beat Bayern.
Interesting. Lots of people commenting about this game on Facebook and Twitter. Emily, which ones have you pulled out for us?
Hi James. Yeah, we've got goal readers posting questions to our experts on Facebook and Twitter. And there's a post here from Yusuf Usman who says here that Arsenal have already proven Bayern aren't invincible, as Carlo was saying earlier. He fancies Juve to win due to their superior tactical approach. And then there's a tweet from Lewis Rexter who says that both sides are known for their strong midfield, but want to know who our experts think have the edge in this area.
It's interesting that, isn't it? The Bayern trio of Schweinsteiger, Javi Martinez and Toni Kroos. No Martinez, though, for the first leg because he's suspended, against the Juve triumvirate of Marchisio, Arturo Vidal and, of course, the great god Pirlo. Who's got the edge?
It's tough to say. I think you'll see a vastly different approach in each of the legs. Who's ever playing at home, of course that's Bayern in the first leg. I expect them to have more of the ball. And Juve away from home in the Champions League, they're well equipped to set up to play on the defensive. They don't mind doing it. We saw it in 2 legs against Celtic where they were content to let Celtic have the ball in front of them without getting turned or without getting troubled really themselves. Bayern, on the other hand, they like to force the issue, but while they're at home. But when they're away from home, I think they're a little bit more susceptible to threats like set pieces. And I think players like Barzagli, Bonucci and Chiellini, if they can get in and around the box at those set pieces, then I think they can cause Bayern Munich all sorts of trouble.
But which midfield is better, though, Pete?
Which midfield is better? I think we're about to find out. Both of these teams have been dominating their domestic leagues, and they all have their respective strengths. Obviously, the craft and artistry of Pirlo is far and away better than anything I think that Bayern have, aside maybe from the goal-scoring threat of Toni Kroos. So I think I'm going to put myself on the fence here for just until this leg is over.
I think the most dangerous weapons that Bayern have, and the only weapons that the Juventus will be truly scared about, are the attacking midfield trio of Toni Kroos in the centre, on the right Thomas Müller, who's having a fantastic season, and on the left Franck Ribéry. I think if Juventus stop those three, I think they'll be confident that they can win the tie. But in the actual centre of the midfield, I think Juventus have got the edge, and I think they showed that at Euro 2012 when Italy beat Germany in the semi-final. That was almost the Juventus versus Bayern midfield battle, and that day Italy or Juventus totally dominated that midfield and they won the game.
Although it wasn't so much about Pirlo that game as one of his Italy colleagues.
Well, I think that's the danger when you play against Juventus. Everyone is so focused on stopping Pirlo that they almost forget that Juventus have a lot of other top-class players. Particularly in midfield. Arturo Vidal is a world-class midfielder. He won the most tackles in Europe for the whole of last season. He won the most tackles in the Champions League group stages this season. He's an absolutely brilliant player who scores goals as well. If Bayern focus too much on him, which is what Germany did at Euro 2012, then they run the risk of a Vidal or Marchisio doing the damage instead of Pirlo.
Well, the difficulty is that if they don't pay enough attention to him, then they run the risk of ending up looking like England did at Euro 2012, which wasn't pretty. Now, you mentioned the amount of possession that Juve allowed Celtic or that Celtic took in the last 16 games. Celtic, though not perhaps blessed with the greatest finishers, Bayern, if they're allowed that much of the ball, are they not going to really punish Juve?
Bayern have a stronger cutting edge up front than Juventus do. Mirko Vucinic and Jovinko and Quagliarella and Matri and whoever else is playing up front for Juventus, you don't always think you can rely on them to get those important goals at the important times. Whereas Mario Gomez and Mario Mandzukic this season have shown that when the chips are down and when they do need it, aside from very, very notable exceptions, then they can generally be relied upon to sniff out a chance.
Interesting, and that tactical flexibility that Antonio Conte has shown this season could be a major advantage.
I think Peter's absolutely right. I think Juventus, there's a number of ways they can score. They can score through the middle, obviously with the craft of a Pirlo. They're very strong on the flanks, and I actually think that the two sets of wing-backs on both teams will cancel each other out, which is why the centre of midfield will be so important. They can attack from deep, like they did against Celtic, where they invited pressure onto them and then almost scored on the counter-attack. So I think they're a little bit more complete. Bayern have a set way of playing, and that's the way they play.
For Pete, it's Juventus. Just what's Carlo's view?
I'm going to tip Juventus as well. I think it'll be very close. It will be a tie that will be decided on the small details. But I think that Juventus will win the midfield battle, and I think that will be decisive.
Wow, quite a battle in store then. You can get all the latest on this and all the rest of the Champions League clashes at goal.com. And remember, if you have any other questions, just use the hashtag AskGoal.